Touch her again, and you answer to the crown. The Alpha King's voice cut through the Greyhaven pack hall, cold enough to silence every wolf in the room. Mara Ellison stood at the bottom of the steps with Alpha Everett's command still pressing against her bones, ordering her to kneel. She was an Omega. In Greyhaven, that meant she sat in the back row, spoke when invited, and kept her eyes lowered when an Alpha was angry. But Mara did not kneel. Her hands trembled at her sides, and every instinct begged her to surrender, yet she kept her chin up. Across the hall, King Callum Thorne stared at her as though he had just recognized a ghost. Then his eyes flashed amber. Mate. The word struck through him so violently that Grim Ward, the werewolf inside him, slammed against his control. Callum tightened one hand around the edge of the council table. No one noticed. No one except Mara. She felt something pull beneath her ribs, warm and impossible, but the scent-blocking herbs around her wrist burned sharply against her skin and smothered it before she could understand. Everett turned toward the king. Your Majesty, this Omega violated pack law. She interfered with a royal security matter. Mara nearly laughed. Royal security matter. That was a generous name for finding a half-frozen wolf caught in a silver trap behind the veterinary clinic. She had cut it free, stitched its shoulder, wrapped it in 3 blankets, and fallen asleep with her arms around its neck because the emergency heater had failed. She had thought it was young, frightened, maybe abandoned. She had not known the enormous black wolf with the silver stripe down its back was Grim Ward, the Alpha King's legendary war form. She definitely had not known the man now defending her had stayed perfectly still all night rather than wake her. She saved my life, Callum said. Everett's expression hardened. She touched the royal wolf without permission. I was busy keeping him from freezing, Mara replied. A few Alphas turned toward her, stunned that an Omega had spoken without being asked. Everett stepped closer. You will remember your place. Mara met his eyes, even as the command tightened in her chest. My place was beside an injured animal. Silence fell. Not polite silence. Dangerous silence. Callum descended from the raised platform one measured step at a time. The most powerful Alpha in North America stopped beside an Omega wearing worn boots and a clinic jacket stained with antiseptic. Every face had turned toward her. Not with respect. Not yet. With calculation. Alpha Everett recovered first. The bell is ceremonial, he said. Old wiring. Nothing more. It has no wiring, said Dr. Evelyn Hart from the back row. The older woman stood slowly, her expression tight. That bell was forged before Greyhaven had electricity. A murmur passed through the room. Mara stared at the broken bracelet on the floor. The bitter scent of crushed herbs still clung to her skin, but beneath it, something warmer had escaped. Something that seemed to reach for Callum whether she wanted it to or not. She took one step back. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Clear the hall, Callum ordered. Everett stiffened. Your Majesty, this is my territory. Callum turned his head just enough to look at him. Then act like it's Alpha and protect your people from panic. No one argued after that. Chairs shifted. Boots crossed the polished floor. Pack members filed toward the doors, whispering behind lowered hands. Some looked frightened. Others looked angry. A few Omegas glanced at Mara with something she had never seen directed at her before. Hope. That frightened her more than the anger. Within minutes, only Callum, Everett, Captain Nolan, Dr. Hart, and Mara remained. Callum bent and picked up the broken bracelet. He rolled one of the dried stems between his fingers. Wintergreen, cedar bark, bitterroot. Evelyn's face lost its color. Those are common remedies. Not in that combination. His voice stayed calm, but Mara felt the wolf behind it. This blend suppresses scent recognition. It is used on children whose identities must be hidden. Mara looked at Evelyn. Children. Evelyn did not answer. That silence landed harder than any insult Everett had thrown at her. Mara's throat tightened. You told me it helped with headaches. It did help, Evelyn said softly. That was not the only reason. Callum stepped closer, then stopped before entering Mara's space. It was such a small thing, that pause, but she noticed it. Most Alphas took whatever distance they wanted. He waited. Did you know? She asked him. About the bracelet? About me. His jaw tightened. I knew the moment it broke. And before that, for 1 second, the hard mask slipped. She saw exhaustion beneath it. And guilt. My wolf knew something when you found me in the snow. Everett scoffed. She found an animal. That proves nothing. Callum's eyes flashed amber. She found a king in his weakest form and asked for nothing. The room went still again. Mara folded her arms, trying to hold herself together. I asked you not to tear the stitches. Nolan coughed into his fist, almost hiding a smile. Callum looked at her, and something unexpectedly gentle moved through his expression. You also called me a puppy. You were half frozen. I weigh more than 200 pounds in that form. I was tired. The warmth lasted only a second. Then Evelyn spoke. There is something Mara needs to see. She crossed to an old cabinet built into the wall and unlocked the bottom drawer with a key from her necklace. Inside was a weathered file marked Silver Hollow. Mara knew the name only from history lessons. A traitor pack. Destroyed 25 years ago. Evelyn placed the file on the table but kept one hand over it. Your mother asked me to burn this, she said. I could not. Mara's pulse stumbled. My mother died when I was 6. Yes. Evelyn looked at Callum, then back at Mara. But before she died, she made me promise the crown would never learn what you were. Behind them, one of the locked hall doors clicked open by itself. A man in a dark overcoat stood on the other side, silver hair neat despite the storm. Royal Chancellor Gideon Shaw smiled without warmth. I am afraid, he said. The crown already knows. Callum moved before anyone else. One moment he stood beside Mara. The next, he was between her and Gideon Shaw, his shoulders squared, his voice quiet enough to make the room colder. You entered a sealed pack hall without permission. Gideon removed his gloves with careful precision. I entered because the royal bell rang 7 times. Every alpha within 50 miles heard it. Everett glanced toward the windows, where headlights were already appearing on the snowy road below. Mara counted at least 6 vehicles climbing toward the hall. News was spreading fast. Gideon's eyes settled on the Silver Hollow file beneath Dr. Hart's hand. And it appears I arrived just in time. Mara stepped around Callum. The pull beneath her ribs warned her to stay close to him, but she refused to hide behind a king she had known for less than a day. You said the crown knows what I am. Gideon studied her as though she were a page in an old report. You have your mother's eyes. That is not an answer. A faint smile touched his mouth. No, it is confirmation. Callum's wolf pressed against his control, hot and restless. Mara felt the change before his eyes turned amber. The mate bond was not words or commands. It was pressure, instinct, and the sudden certainty that something dangerous had entered the room. She reached toward Callum without thinking, then stopped before touching his sleeve. He noticed her hand. His breathing steadied anyway. Gideon noticed that too. Interesting, he murmured. Callum's voice sharpened. Choose your next words carefully. Your father gave me the same warning 25 years ago. The room went silent. Callum stared at him. My father ordered Silver Hollow punished for treason. Your father signed what the council placed in front of him. Gideon nodded toward the file. The official record says Silver Hollow planned to overthrow the crown. The private record says they refused to surrender their heart wardens. Mara looked at Evelyn. What is a heart warden? Evelyn lifted her hand from the folder, but she still did not open it. A wolf born with the ability to calm another wolf's instincts. Not through force, through connection. Everett gave a humorless laugh. A prettier name for control. No, Evelyn said. Control removes choice. Heart wardens give it back. Mara thought of the black wolf behind the clinic. The way his growl had faded when she touched his fur. The way every wild wolf in the veterinary recovery room had always settled when she entered. She had believed she was simply good with frightened animals. Gideon took one step forward. Callum blocked him immediately. The council spent years searching for the surviving bloodline. Gideon continued. Your mother disappeared before they found her. Then a child appeared in Greyhaven with no family name, no pack scent, and a physician willing to lie. Mara turned toward Evelyn. You knew all of it. Pain crossed the older woman's face. I knew enough to keep you alive. By lying to me every day. By making sure no alpha could recognize you. The words landed hard. Mara looked down at the crushed herbs around her boots. The bracelet had not only hidden her scent, it had hidden her life. Callum reached for the Silver Hollow file. Evelyn hesitated, then released it. He opened the cover and froze. Mara saw the first page upside down. A royal order. A list of names. At the bottom was the signature of King Alaric Thorne, Callum's father. Beside it, written in darker ink, was another name. Gideon Shaw. Callum lifted his gaze slowly. You approved the purge. Gideon did not deny it. Outside, car doors slammed. Voices rose on the steps as more alphas arrived. Gideon looked past Callum and directly at Mara. I protected the stability of the crown. Mara felt the bond pull tight as Callum's anger surged. This time, she placed her hand against his arm. His wolf went still. Gideon's expression changed. Not fear. Recognition. There it is, he whispered. Then the great doors shook beneath a heavy knock, and an unfamiliar alpha called from outside. By order of the Royal Council, surrender the Heart Warden. The knock came again, harder this time. Dust slipped from the old wooden frame, and several wolves outside answered with low, impatient growls. Mara kept her hand on Callum's arm. Beneath her palm, the tension in him felt like a drawn wire. Do not open that door, he said. Captain Nolan moved at once, locking the second iron bolt into place. Alpha Everett did not. He crossed the hall with his shoulders squared, wearing the expression he used whenever he wanted Greyhaven to remember who ruled it. This is my pack hall, he said, and the Royal Council has lawful authority here. Callum turned toward him. I am the Royal Council's highest authority. Not when your judgment is compromised by a suspected mate bond. The words struck the room like a match. Mara pulled her hand back. The loss of contact made Grimward push forward again, but Callum forced him down. His face remained calm. Only the amber gathering in his eyes betrayed him. Everett looked at Mara. Kneel. The alpha command hit her without warning. Her knees weakened, air caught in her lungs, and the old instinct to obey wrapped around her spine. For years, she had survived by giving alphas what they expected. A lowered gaze, a quiet answer, an apology she did not owe. Callum took one step toward Everett. Release her. She is under my jurisdiction. Release her. Everett's power tightened. Mara's legs trembled, but she stayed standing. She focused on the rough floor beneath her boots, the cold air entering through the window seams, and the steady beat of Callum's heart nearby. Not commanding her, not claiming her, waiting. You will remember your rank, Everett said. Mara raised her eyes. I remember it perfectly. Her voice shook, but it did not break. I am the person who saved your king while every guard in this territory was looking in the wrong direction. Nolan lowered his gaze, hiding what might have been approval. Dr. Hart looked close to tears. Everett's face hardened. The pressure increased, and Mara nearly fell. Callum moved, but Mara lifted one hand. No, he stopped. Every alpha in the room stared at her. She swallowed and faced Everett again. If I kneel now, it will be because I choose to help someone. Not because you decided I was born lower than you. Something shifted through the pack bond. Not rebellion. Recognition. From behind the sealed doors came silence, as if the wolves outside had felt it too. Everett's command cracked. Mara drew a full breath. Callum's expression changed, and for the first time she saw pride there. Not the approval of a king rewarding a subject. The respect of one equals seeing another stand. Gideon watched from beside the table, his face unreadable. This proves exactly why she must be contained, he said. Callum turned on him. She resisted an unlawful command. That is not a crime. A Heart Warden who can disrupt pack hierarchy is a threat to every alpha in this alliance. Maybe the hierarchy deserves to be disrupted, Mara said. Gideon's eyes narrowed. Outside, someone shouted that they would break the doors. Nolan reached for his radio. Royal Guards are 2 minutes out. Too late, Everett said. He lifted the inner latch. Callum crossed the hall so quickly that Everett froze with his hand on the handle. The Alpha King did not touch him. He did not need to. Open that door, Callum said softly. And you are not choosing the council over me. You are choosing men who buried the truth about Silver Hollow. Everett looked toward Gideon. That single glance told Mara more than any confession. Callum saw it too. You knew they were coming, he said. Everett stepped away from the door, but the guilt had already settled over the room. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, glass shattered near the rear wall. Mara heard Evelyn gasp, Nolan shout, and Callum's wolf surge through the bond. A hand closed around Mara's wrist and pulled her backward. It was not Callum's. A voice whispered beside her ear, Your mother was right to hide you. The hand pulled Mara through the broken window before she could call out. Snow struck her face, sharp and cold, and her boots slid across the icy ground behind the pack hall. Let go of me. She twisted hard, drove her elbow back, and heard a familiar voice curse under its breath. Mara, stop. It is me. Tessa Vale released her and stepped into the weak blue light from the emergency lamps. Greyhaven's Beta wore a dark winter coat over her uniform, her brown hair dusted with snow. You scared 10 years off my life, Mara said. Good. That means you still have one. Behind them, something heavy hit the locked doors. Callum's voice carried through the building, followed by Nolan ordering the guards to secure every exit. The pull beneath Mara's ribs tightened until it almost hurt. Callum was looking for her. Grimward was close to the surface. Why did you drag me out here? Mara asked. Tessa glanced toward the tree line. Because Everett told Gideon where your mother hid the Silver Hollow records. The council did not come only for you. They came to destroy whatever proves what happened. Mara stared at her. You knew about the records? Tessa hesitated 1 second too long. I knew your mother left something in the Northern Preserve. Betrayal arrived quietly. No shouting. No dramatic break. Just the sudden understanding that her closest friend had been carrying pieces of her life and had never trusted her with them. How long? Mara asked. Since we were 17. The back doors of the hall burst open. Callum emerged into the snow without a coat, his eyes fully amber. Nolan and 2 royal guards followed several steps behind him. His gaze found Mara, moved over her face and hands, then locked on Tessa. Step away from her. Tessa raised both palms. I was getting her out before the council did. You touched her without warning. I did not have time to send a polite invitation. Mara stepped between them before the air could turn heavier. Enough. Tessa says the council is after records in the preserve. Callum looked at Mara. The fury in him eased, but not completely. Are you hurt? No, did she force you? Tessa rolled her eyes. I saved her. Mara kept her attention on Callum. She surprised me. That is all. He accepted the answer because it was hers. The distinction mattered. Where are the records? He asked. Tessa pointed north, toward the dark ridge beyond town. An old ranger station about 12 miles into the preserve. Mara's mother used it before Silver Hollow fell. Nolan checked his radio. The main road is blocked by snow. Then we take the service trail, Callum said. Everett appeared in the broken doorway behind them. No one leaves Greyhaven territory without my approval. Callum turned slowly. You lost the right to approve anything when you opened that door for Gideon's men. Everett's face tightened. You have no proof. Not yet. Callum looked toward the forest. That is what we are going to find. 20 minutes later, Mara sat in the passenger seat of a royal utility truck while Callum drove through nearly 8 inches of fresh snow. Tessa and Nolan followed in a second vehicle. The heater rattled, the windshield wipers fought the storm, and neither Mara nor Callum spoke for the first mile. Finally, he said, you felt me looking for you. It was not a question. Mara watched the pine trees disappear into white. I felt something angry enough to tear down a building. That was Grimward. And you? Callum tightened his hands on the steering wheel. I was worse. She turned toward him. He kept his eyes on the road. I did not know if you had been taken, he said. For a moment, I could not hear anything except the bond. Mara's chest warmed despite the cold. You still stopped when I told you I was safe. You are not mine to command. His answer came without hesitation. And you are not a weapon for me to use. Before she could respond, a dark shape appeared in the headlights. Callum hit the brakes. 3 wild wolves stood across the trail. One was limping. Another carried a strip of silver wire tangled around its hind leg. Mara opened the door. Stay in the truck, Callum said. But the order held concern, not alpha power. She looked back at him. They are hurt. The wolves did not run when she approached. They lowered their heads. Then, one by one, every wolf in the trees stepped into view and bowed. Callum came to stand beside her, staring at the silent forest. Wild wolves do not bow to pack rank, he said. Mara's breath fogged between them. Then why are they doing it? A low mechanical click answered from somewhere beyond the trees. Callum pulled Mara behind him just as a silver trap snapped shut on the empty snow where she had been standing. The silver trap snapped shut with a crack that sent every wolf in the clearing backward. Callum kept one arm across Mara's path, his body between her and the hidden mechanism. Do not move. His voice was low, controlled, but she felt Grimward pacing beneath his skin. Mara stared at the steel jaws buried in the snow, less than a foot from her boot. That was not meant for a wild animal. No. Callum crouched without touching the trap. A small crown had been stamped into the hinge. It was made in a royal armory. Nolan and Tessa reached them moments later. Nolan examined the mark, then looked toward the dark trees. Only council officers can authorize this equipment. Gideon knew we would come, Tessa said. Mara turned to her. How could he know where the records were unless someone told him? Tessa's face tightened. She looked away. That was answer enough. Everett, Mara said. He has known all along. Before Tessa could respond, the injured wolf gave a weak whine. The silver wire around its leg had tightened, and the rest of the pack watched Mara with guarded eyes. Callum caught her wrist gently as she stepped forward. There may be more traps. Then check the snow while I help it. Mara, you said I am not yours to command. His jaw flexed. For half a second, she expected anger. Instead, he released her. Stay where I can reach you. It was not permission. It was a request. Mara moved slowly toward the injured wolf, speaking in the same calm voice she used at the clinic. I know. This has been a terrible night. The wolf's ears flattened, but it did not bare its teeth. She knelt, keeping her hands visible. When her fingers touched its shoulder, warmth spread through her palm. The panic in the clearing changed. It did not vanish. It loosened. One wolf stopped growling. Then another. Even Grimward grew quiet behind Callum's eyes. Mara carefully unwound the wire. There you go, she whispered. Nobody owns you. The injured wolf leaned its head against her shoulder for one brief moment before limping toward the trees. The entire pack followed, but the oldest wolf paused beside a snow-covered marker and scraped the ground twice. Beneath the ice was a faded silver hollow symbol. Tessa went pale. The ranger station is close. They continued on foot for the final half-mile, following the wolves through a narrow break in the pines. The building appeared beneath heavy snow, its windows boarded and its roof sagging on one side. Inside, the air smelled of dust, cedar, and old smoke. Mara found a photograph on the wall beneath a cracked frame. Her mother stood in front of the same station, younger than Mara remembered, surrounded by men and women wearing the silver hollow crest. Beside her was King Alaric Thorne, Callum's father. They were not enemies. They were smiling. Mara turned the photograph over. 3 lines had been written on the back in her mother's hand. Alaric knows the council lied. The Heart Wardens never betrayed the crown. If I disappear, protect Mara from the throne. Callum read the words over her shoulder and stepped back as though the room had shifted beneath him. My father knew, he said. Mara looked at him, anger rising through the shock. Then why did he sign the order? Callum had no answer. Nolan opened a metal cabinet in the corner and pulled out a sealed ledger. Your Majesty, there are payment records here. Silver purchases, transport routes, names. He turned the final page. At the bottom was Everett Kane's signature, dated 2 days earlier. Then the floorboard beneath Mara's feet gave a soft click. Callum seized her around the waist and pulled her back as a hidden panel opened in the wall. Inside was a small audio recorder, its red light blinking. Her mother's voice filled the room, weak but unmistakable. Mara, if you are hearing this, the Alpha King has already found you. Do not trust the crown until he tells you what his bloodline did to ours. Callum released Mara at once, but the warmth of his arm stayed around her waist like an echo. Her mother's recorded voice continued through the dusty ranger station. The Thorn Kings were told Heart Wardens could control armies. That was the lie. We could calm wolves long enough for them to choose reason over instinct, and frightened men decided choice was more dangerous than obedience. Static crackled through the speaker. Mara stared at the recorder, afraid to breathe. King Alaric tried to stop the council, her mother said. But he waited too long. By the time he challenged them, Silver Hollow had already been condemned. Callum stood perfectly still. The guilt moving through the mate bond was so heavy Mara almost mistook it for her own. He knew, Callum said. My father knew the charges were false. Nolan lowered the ledger. He may have been trying to gather proof. He still wore the crown when the order was carried out. Mara's voice came out sharper than she intended. Callum looked at her, and she saw no anger in his face. Only pain. Yes, he said. He did. The simple admission took some of the heat from her anger. He did not defend the throne. He did not hide behind a dead king. Tessa moved toward the boarded window. We should leave. Everett's people will be close. As if the forest had heard her, an engine sounded beyond the trees. Then another. Nolan shut off the lantern. 2 vehicles, maybe 3. Callum handed him the ledger. Take Tessa through the rear trail. Get the records to the Royal Guard. And you? Nolan asked. I will draw them away. Mara stepped forward. No, Callum turned to her. They came for you, which means they will follow you if they think I am with you. You are not being used as bait. Neither are you. The bond tightened between them, carrying fear in both directions. Grimward pushed forward, furious at the danger closing in, and Callum gripped the edge of the table until the wood creaked. His breathing changed. Too fast. Too shallow. Callum. He did not answer. Amber swallowed his eyes as years of pressure broke through at once. The council, his father's silence, the traps, the threat against Mara. Nolan took a careful step back. Crown madness. Do not call it that, Callum growled. Mara remembered the wounded wolf in the snow. She remembered how he had gone still beneath her hands, not because she had forced him, but because he had trusted her. She moved closer. Look at me. Stay back. No, his wolf surged, and a low warning filled the room. Tessa reached for Mara, but she shook her head. He is still in there. Mara stopped within arm's reach. You do not have to be king in this room. Callum's shoulders locked. Mara, you do not have to solve Silver Hollow tonight. You do not have to carry your father's choices. You only have to breathe. She placed her palm against his chest. His heartbeat slammed beneath it. With me, she said. Just breathe with me. Slowly, painfully he did. One breath, then another. Grimward's anger receded, not defeated, but heard. Callum lowered his forehead until it nearly touched hers, leaving the final inch between them for her to choose. Mara did not close it. She simply stayed. Outside, doors slammed and voices spread through the snow. Inside, the most feared alpha in the country stood beneath her hand and became quiet. How did you do that? He whispered. I did not do anything to you. Mara looked into his amber eyes. I reminded you that you still had a choice. For the first time in 6 years, Callum Thorne closed his eyes without hearing his wolf rage. Then a rifle bolt clicked outside, and Gideon Shaw's voice carried through the wall. Bring me the Heart Warden alive. The king is no longer necessary. Callum opened his eyes, and the calm Mara had given him hardened into something colder. Rear exit, he said. Nolan moved first, pulling the loose boards away from a narrow service door. Tessa grabbed the silver hollow ledger and the recorder. Outside, Gideon's men spread through the trees, their flashlights cutting across the snow. You heard him, Mara said. They do not care whether you survive. Callum looked toward the wall, listening to footsteps only an alpha could track. They have not cared for a long time. A metal canister struck the roof and rolled into the snow beside the station. Thick gray smoke began to rise. Nolan swore under his breath. They are forcing us out. Callum turned to Tessa. Take Mara down the rear trail. No, Mara said. We stay together. This is not the time. Then stop deciding what I can handle. The words came out harder than she expected. The mate bond carried his frustration, but beneath it was fear. Not fear for himself. Fear of losing her. Tessa stepped between them. Both of you can argue after we are alive. She pulled a key ring from her pocket and opened a rusted hatch beneath the old desk. Cold air rushed up from a tunnel below. Nolan stared at her. How did you know that was there? Tessa did not answer. Mara saw it immediately. The turned shoulders. The refusal to meet her eyes. The old, familiar silence. Tessa. Her friend closed her eyes. Your mother showed me. Mara felt the room tilt. When, 8 years ago, Callum's attention shifted from the windows to Tessa. You knew this station was active. I knew enough to keep Mara away from it. You kept me away from my own history, Mara said. Tessa's voice broke. I kept you alive. Everybody keeps saying that. Mara stepped closer. Evelyn lied. You lied. Everett watched me wear that bracelet every day. How many people knew who I was while I walked around believing I was nothing? Tessa flinched. Outside, Gideon called for Callum to surrender. No one inside moved. I was 17, Tessa said. Your mother's last message came through my father. She said if the crown ever found you, Greyhaven would fall with you. So you reported me to Everett. Tessa's silence answered. Mara took a step back. The betrayal was not sudden anymore. It had roots. Years of shared coffee, late shifts, birthdays, and promises now twisted around a secret Tessa had chosen to keep. You told him about the bracelet, Mara said. Only after the bell rang. I thought he would move you somewhere safe. Everett opened the door for Gideon. I did not know. You did not ask. Tessa's eyes filled, but Mara could not comfort her. Not yet. A flashlight beam swept past the broken window. Callum placed himself between Mara and the glass. We leave now. They climbed into the tunnel one at a time. The passage was narrow, barely 4 feet high, and smelled of wet earth. Nolan led with the ledger under his coat. Tessa followed. Mara went next, with Callum behind her. Above them, Boots entered the station. Gideon's voice sounded through the floorboards. Search everything. The tunnel sloped downward for nearly 200 yards before opening behind a wall of pine roots. Snow covered the forest, untouched except for wolf tracks. Nolan checked the road below. The royal vehicles are gone. Tessa looked toward a distant ridge. Everett controls the service roads. Callum faced her. How much else have you told him? Nothing that would endanger Mara. Mara gave a tired laugh. You do not get to decide what endangered me. Tessa swallowed. You are right. No excuse. No request for forgiveness. Just the truth, late and painful. A radio crackled in Nolan's hand. Dr. Hart's frightened voice came through. Captain, Greyhaven has called an emergency pack assembly. Everett is telling everyone the king was compromised by a heart warden. Another voice interrupted the signal. Gideon. Calm. Public. Prepared. Mara Ellison has manipulated the Alpha King and stolen royal records. Any wolf assisting her will be charged with treason. The transmission ended. Callum's expression went still. Mara felt the entire weight of the alliance settle through the bond. He could return as king and deny her, or stand beside her and risk losing the throne. Before either of them spoke, Tessa pulled a second recorder from inside her coat. There is one thing Everett does not know I kept, she said. She pressed play. Everett's voice filled the snowy woods. Once Gideon removes Callum, Greyhaven gets the northern territories. The Omega will not survive the transfer. Everett's recorded voice faded into the snow-covered trees, leaving behind a silence so complete Mara could hear the branches shifting above them. Tessa lowered the recorder. I copied that 3 nights ago. I was going to confront him, but then the royal delegation arrived. Nolan took the device from her and checked the file. This is enough to open a formal investigation. Not if Gideon controls the assembly, Callum said. His voice was steady, but the mate bond carried the pressure building inside him. 7 packs were already gathering in Greyhaven. By morning, every alpha in the Northern Alliance would have chosen a side. Mara looked toward the distant lights of town. Then we play it in front of everyone. Tessa shook her head. Everett has locked down the pack hall. He will search anyone who enters. He will not search me, Callum said. Nolan looked at him carefully. Your Majesty, Gideon has already claimed you are compromised. Then he expects me to return angry. Callum turned to Mara. He expects Grimward. He does not expect restraint. She understood immediately. He could walk into the assembly alone, let Gideon believe the crown still mattered more than the woman beside him, and get close enough to expose the recording. The thought made her chest tighten. You want me to stay hidden? I want you protected until Nolan gets the evidence inside. That is not the same thing. No, he held her gaze. It is not. Tessa looked between them. There may be another way in. The old heating tunnels connect the preserve station to the lower level of the pack hall. Nolan frowned. Those tunnels were sealed years ago. Not all of them. Mara folded her arms. You knew about those too? Tessa accepted the anger without defending herself. Yes. The honesty hurt, but it was better than another excuse. Callum stepped closer to Mara, stopping before the distance became a claim. If you come with us, the council will use your presence as proof that I cannot act independently. And if I disappear, they will call me guilty. They may. Then I would rather be seen. The bond shifted between them. Callum's fear remained, but something else moved beneath it. Respect. You should know what they will say, he warned. They will call you dangerous. They will say you control me. Mara glanced at the wolves gathered quietly among the trees. People have been deciding what I am my whole life. I am done helping them. Nolan let out a slow breath. Then we need a plan. They reached Greyhaven just before midnight, moving through the maintenance tunnels beneath the old lumber district. Above them, the pack assembly had begun. Voices traveled through the pipes, distorted but clear enough to recognize. Everett was demanding emergency authority. Gideon was calling for Callum's removal. Then another woman spoke, calm and polished. Before this council condemns anyone, perhaps we should hear from the king. Tessa stopped. That is Lady Brielle Ashford. Mara knew the name. The Alpha-born woman selected by the council to become Callum's political consort. A match meant to secure 3 powerful packs. Callum's expression revealed nothing. The mate bond did. Regret. Duty. A promise made before Mara existed in his life. They reached a narrow grate beneath the main hall. Through it, Mara saw dozens of pack leaders seated in rising rows. Gideon stood at the center. Beside him was Brielle, dressed in dark blue, a silver crest at her throat. Everett raised his hand for silence. The Alpha King has abandoned his duty for an unstable Omega. Callum touched Mara's arm lightly. Stay here until Nolan signals. Then he climbed the service steps and entered the hall alone. Every wolf turned. Gideon smiled. Your Majesty, have you come to surrender the Heart Warden? Callum stopped beneath the royal platform. No. His gaze moved past the council, toward the grate where Mara waited. I came to surrender something else. He removed the crown seal from his coat and placed it on the table. The room erupted. Mara's breath caught. Gideon looked almost pleased. Then Callum lifted his head. My silence. My silence, Callum said again, and the room fell still. He left the crown seal on the table, then turned to face every alpha who had gathered beneath Greyhaven's high timber ceiling. For 25 years, the throne allowed Silver Hollow to be remembered as traitors. That record was false. Gideon stepped forward. Your Majesty, you are under the influence of a Heart Warden. No, Callum said. For the first time, I am not under the influence of fear. A murmur moved through the assembly. Everett rose from his chair. You expect us to believe in Omega over the Royal Council? Callum looked at him. I expect you to believe your own voice. Beneath the floor, Nolan gave the signal. Tessa passed him the recorder, and he connected it to the hall's speaker system. Static filled the room. Then Everett's words came through clearly. Once Gideon removes Callum, Greyhaven gets the Northern Territories. The Omega will not survive the transfer. Every wolf in the hall turned toward Everett. His face went pale, but Gideon remained calm. A recording can be altered. Then let us discuss the royal silver purchased under your authorization, Nolan said as he entered through the side door with the ledger raised in one hand. Or the traps placed along the northern preserve. Or the order to detain Mara Ellison before she could reach this assembly. Everett backed away from the table. This is a setup. Lady Brielle stood. Her polished calm made the room listen. I reviewed the council's financial reports before traveling here. 3 payments were hidden under border security expenses. The amounts matched this ledger. Gideon's eyes hardened. You were brought here to support the crown. I was brought here to marry it, Brielle replied. Those are not the same thing. Mara heard the reaction ripple through the hall. She climbed the narrow service steps before Callum could stop her and stepped into the open. The whispers began immediately. Heart Warden. Manipulator. Omega. Mara walked past them without lowering her eyes. Callum did not reach for her. He waited until she chose where to stand. She stopped beside him. Gideon pointed toward her. There. Look at the king. She calms his wolf with a touch. She makes him abandon treaties. How is that not control? Mara faced the council. Because he can say no. Her voice carried farther than she expected. Because every time I helped him, he still had a choice. Heart Wardens do not take away instinct. We give wolves enough peace to decide what they do with it. An older alpha in the second row leaned forward. And what do you want in return? Mara looked around the hall that had once placed her in the back row. The truth. Freedom from laws that treat people like property. And the right to walk out of this room without becoming the crown's tool. Callum's gaze shifted to her, and the bond warmed between them. Gideon laughed softly. You speak as though you have leverage. She does, Brielle said. She removed the silver crest from her throat and placed it beside Callum's seal. 3 packs agreed to my political match because the council promised stability. I will testify that Gideon used that agreement to hide an attempt to remove the king. The room erupted again. Gideon raised his voice. Callum Thorne is no longer fit to lead. Everett seized the moment. Greyhaven invokes emergency authority. He reached toward the central alarm switch. Mara felt grim ward surge through the bond, but Callum did not move. Nolan caught Everett's wrist before he touched it and guided him away from the controls without force. You are being detained pending a full pack inquiry, Nolan said. Everett looked at Mara with open hatred. This is because of you. Mara shook her head. No, this is because of what you chose. Gideon moved toward the rear exit, but the doors opened before he reached them. Dozens of Greyhaven pack members stood outside, including Omegas who had once sat silently in the back row. Dr. Hart stepped to the front. "The hall is sealed," she said. "Nobody leaves until Silver Hollow is heard." Gideon stopped. For the first time that night, his confidence cracked. Then the old bell above the hall began to ring. Once, twice, 7 times. But this time, Mara understood what it meant. The crown had not chosen her. The wolves had recognized that she had chosen herself. The 7th bell had barely stopped when every light in the hall went dark. A steel panel slammed over the main doors, sealing the room before Nolan could reach the controls. Red emergency lamps flickered to life along the walls. Gideon stood beneath them with one hand resting on a small remote. "Silver Hollow will be heard," he said, "but not in the way you imagined." A hidden vent opened above the royal platform. The sharp scent of powdered silver spread through the hall. Wolves coughed and stumbled away from the rising haze. Mara felt the bond flare with Callum's alarm. "Cover your mouth," he told her. He pulled off his coat and held it over her nose, but she pushed half of it back toward him. We both breathed. Around them, the pack hierarchy collapsed into confusion. Alphas shouted orders over one another. Omegas helped children toward the floor where the air was clearer. Brielle climbed onto a bench and called, "Stop pushing. Move toward the eastern wall," and rose. Her voice cut through the panic more effectively than any command. Gideon backed toward the private council exit. This is what happens when order is challenged. Fear takes over. "You planned this," Callum said. Grimward strained beneath his control, reacting to the silver and the threat surrounding Mara. His hands shook. His eyes turned amber. Gideon smiled. "All I need is for the northern packs to see their king lose control." Mara reached for Callum, but he stepped away from her. "Do not," he said through clenched teeth. "I could hurt you." The words cut deeper than he meant them to. She understood the fear behind them, but the distance still felt like rejection. Every secret, every warning, every law seemed to stand between them at once. "You trusted me in the ranger station," she said. "This is different." "Because everyone is watching?" He looked at her then, and guilt moved through the bond. "Because if I fail, they will blame you." Gideon raised the remote where the assembly could see it. "The Heart Warden has broken him." Mara turned toward the frightened pack members. She could reach for their wolves. She could try to quiet the whole hall. But forcing her gift across so many minds might prove Gideon's accusation, and she did not know what it would cost. Dr. Hart caught her arm. "Your mother tried that once. It nearly took everything from her." Another vent opened. Nolan forced Everett into a chair and grabbed the emergency microphone. "The Eastern Service door is locked from outside." Tessa stepped beside Mara, pale but steady. "There is a manual release below the royal platform. Gideon is standing on it," Mara said. Tessa met her eyes. "Then I will distract him. You have done enough alone." Mara's anger had not disappeared, but neither had 10 years of friendship. "We do it together." They crossed through the haze while Brielle kept the crowd moving. Tessa called Gideon's name and held up the original recorder. "You missed one file." Gideon turned. Mara slipped behind the platform and found the release lever beneath the carved royal crest. Before she could pull it, Everett broke away from Nolan and blocked her path. "You should have stayed invisible," he said. "I tried that," Mara answered. "It only made men like you comfortable." He reached for the lever first. Tessa stepped between them. Everett shoved her aside, and she fell hard against the platform steps. "Tessa!" Mara dropped beside her. Tessa was conscious, but her face tightened with pain. She pressed the recorder into Mara's hand. "Play the final minute." Mara hit the button. Gideon's voice filled the emergency speakers. "If Callum resists, release the silver through the hall. His wolf will turn on the Omega, and the council will have its proof." Every face turned toward him. Gideon's smile vanished. Callum stood in the center of the hall, trembling as Grimward fought for control. Mara rose and walked toward him through the red light. "Mara, stay back," he warned. "No." She stopped in front of him and placed the choice in his hands. "You can send me away, or you can trust me. But you decide." "Not Gideon. Not the crown. You." Callum looked at her for one long second. Then he lowered himself to one knee, not as a king making a claim, but as a man asking for help. Mara placed her hand against his cheek. The mate bond opened between them, bright and unguarded. Grimward went still. Across the hall, hundreds of wolves felt it happen. Gideon stared as his entire plan collapsed. Then Callum lifted his head and said, Open the doors. The crown is under arrest. For one breath, nobody moved. Then Captain Nolan crossed the hall, took the remote from Gideon's hand, and shut the vents. The silver haze began to thin as Brielle pulled the manual release beneath the royal platform. The steel panels over the doors lifted with a heavy groan, and cold mountain air rushed inside. Wolves guided one another out in orderly lines. No one ran. No one obeyed Gideon. Callum rose slowly from one knee, but he did not step away from Mara. His wolf remained quiet beneath her hand, not trapped, not controlled, simply choosing peace. Gideon looked around the hall and seemed to understand that the power had already left him. "You cannot arrest the crown," he said. Callum met his gaze. "You were never the crown." Nolan secured Gideon's council seal and handed it to Brielle. Everett tried to speak, but the gathered pack turned away from him before he could form an excuse. Dr. Hart knelt beside Tessa, checking her shoulder and helping her sit upright. Mara started toward her, then stopped when Callum's hand closed gently around her wrist. Not a command. A question. "Are you sure?" he asked. Mara looked at Tessa. The hurt was still there. So was the truth Tessa had risked herself to preserve. "I am not ready to forgive her," Mara said. "But I am not leaving her alone." Callum released her at once. Tessa gave a strained laugh when Mara reached her. "That sounds fair. Do not make me regret it. I have done enough of that for one lifetime." Across the hall, the 7 alphas gathered near the central table. One of them, Alpha Mason Reed of Black River, spoke first. "The alliance cannot continue without a clear ruler." Another added, "And the mate bond has compromised the throne." Callum turned toward them. He removed the crown seal from the table and held it for a moment. Mara felt the weight of his decision before he spoke. "Then judge me without the seal." He set it on the stone floor. "My father allowed fear to become law. I allowed silence to preserve it. That ends tonight." Gideon shook his head. "You will fracture the northern packs." "No," Mara said. She stood beside Callum, though not beneath his arm and not behind his title. "The packs were already fractured. You just taught everyone to call the cracks stability." The hall went quiet. Brielle stepped forward. "The evidence against Gideon and Everett will be reviewed by representatives from all 7 packs. Until then, authority should remain with the king under public oversight." Mason looked at Mara. "And the Heart Warden?" Callum's wolf stirred, but he waited. Mara answered for herself. "I will not serve the crown. I will not be studied, confined, or assigned a place beside anyone." Her voice shook once, then steadied. "I will help rebuild the laws that erased Silver Hollow, but only as a free member of this alliance." Callum looked at her, and the entire room seemed to wait for him to claim what the bond had already revealed. Instead, he stepped down from the royal platform. "Then I will meet you there," he said. "Not above you." He picked up the seal, but did not put it on. One by one, the 7 alphas lowered their heads. Not to Mara, not to Callum, to the choice they had made in public. Gideon's face hardened as Nolan escorted him toward the open doors. "This will not save the throne," he said. Callum looked at the cold night beyond the hall. Maybe the throne is not what needs saving. Then Mara heard a soft sound behind her. The old bell moved once without ringing, and a hidden panel opened beneath it. Inside lay a second royal document bearing King Alaric Thorne's private seal. Across the top were 5 words that changed everything. Silver Hollow was never condemned. The document beneath King Alaric's private seal did not erase what had happened to Silver Hollow, but it proved the truth had survived. By sunrise, copies were sent to all 7 packs. Gideon Shaw was stripped of office and placed under guard pending a public tribunal. Everett Kane lost authority over Greyhaven, and the pack elected an interim council that included betas, healers, and omegas for the first time. Justice came without celebration. Too many years had been stolen for that. Tessa recovered, though her friendship with Mara did not return overnight. "I kept secrets because I was afraid," she admitted one quiet morning. Mara looked through the clinic window at the snow melting along Main Street. "Fear explains what you did. It does not undo it." Tessa nodded. "I know." Mara left the door open, but she did not pretend the distance was gone. Some forgiveness was not a single moment. It was a road both people had to walk honestly. Lady Brielle helped rewrite the royal laws, ending every rule that treated Heart Wardens as property. She refused the political marriage and became the council's first independent representative. Callum remained Alpha King, but the crown changed. Decisions once made behind sealed doors were now reviewed in public. Power was shared. The pressure inside Grimward eased because Callum no longer carried an entire alliance alone. Mara refused the title of queen. Instead, she opened a center beside the veterinary clinic where young wolves learned that rank did not decide their worth. Months later, on the first warm evening of spring, Callum found her sitting on the clinic steps with 2 cups of coffee. "The council voted again," he said. Mara handed him 1 cup. "Should I be worried?" "Usually." He sat beside her. They approved the Silver Hollow Memorial. She looked toward the mountain ridge where her mother's pack had once lived. "A memorial is not enough." "No," he said, "but it is a promise not to hide the truth again." That night, Callum shifted into Grimward and stretched beside the clinic fireplace. The great black wolf took up most of the rug, his silver-marked back glowing in the soft light. Mara sat beside him, then curled against his warm side with a blanket over her shoulders. His ears lifted. "Do not complain," she said. "You chose the biggest rug." Grimward released a quiet huff and lowered his head beside her. Through the bond, Mara felt no command and no demand. Only a question. She placed her hand against his fur. "Yes," she whispered. "I choose you." The bond settled between them, not like a chain, but like a door opening. Outside, Greyhaven's old bell rang once in the clear night. Not for a queen, not for a king. For 2 people who had learned that love was not proven by possession. Sacrifice was not noble when forced, and power meant little if it could not protect another person's right to choose. Callum stayed still while Mara fell asleep beside him. The world had once feared his wolf and dismissed her voice. In the end, neither of them needed the world to understand. They had built something stronger than a throne, a place where truth could live, where broken trust could heal slowly, and where even the loneliest heart could finally believe it had come home.